Welcome to Investories, a podcast about real stories, real estate, and taking real action. Join hosts John Hooper and Kyle Robertson as they talk investing, mindset, and taking that first step. We all have a story. What's yours? The Investories Podcast.
Booyah! Hey, Kyle.
What's up, buddy? How are you?
Good. Welcome to the Investories Podcast. I'm John Hooper, and with me,
Kyle Robertson, co-host.
I
put it on the end this time instead of co-host Kyle Robertson. Did it flow okay?
I liked it. Yeah, I think that was
Okay.
good. We've got to try and find the rhythm again. Kyle's been on vacation and left me home alone.
I know, it was brilliant too. I almost didn't come home.
Really?
I'm being dead serious.
You could just take the microphone with you, right?
Yeah, right. No, man, we went down to Alabama, and I had never really. I'm from the Pacific Northwest, so I hadn't really thought about Alabama as a destination spot, but we went down to Gulf Shores / Orange Beach, and I had never heard of that as a destination point, but it's right next to Pensacola, which I am familiar with. And so yeah, we actually road tripped it. So it took us, with 3 kids, took us 4 days to get there and 3 days to get home. Spent a week there. Drove around, looked at some of our investment properties in the South, just because my wife hadn't even seen some of them. So we were like, let's go check it out, and you can see what it is I keep talking about. Showed the kids, tried to give them some education on their level about what investing was and why we own these things. And my son, who's 5, thought that when I said that we rent these out, he thought that like we are the renters. And so it was took a little bit of explaining to do to tell him what it was that mommy and daddy did for a living. So it was fun. It was a great time. I got to spend some real live quality time with my kids. And it's easy to get lost in the shuffle. So it was nice to kind of get grounded again.
It's great to take that time out, isn't it? And
oh man, it's solid. Yeah.
Tropical waters. I know the crook of that area around Florida and Clearwater and places like that. Absolutely stunning places.
Yes, man. If I could live in Clearwater, I would in a heartbeat. They don't allow short-term rentals there. So if I was going to buy something out of Oregon where I live, then it would be more of a second home type of a thing. And you'd have to rent it out for, you have to do the midterm thing, 30-day plus, which is a little bit more difficult. I think. I don't really know. I'm not familiar with the space as much, but yeah, I love Clearwater Beach. It's amazing. We're also considering Space Coast for a second home over there, if we can make that happen for short-term rentals too.
Amazing. I love it. Well, I was on a game show.
You were not. Really?
I was. Yeah.
Tell me all about it.
Yeah, it was called People Puzzler. And
okay.
Actually, I don't know if I can talk about it, but I just
did.
did.
Like classified?
It's classified. But it was a super fun experience. Got to hang out with some really cool people. The crew were all amazing. The host was amazing. So yeah, really, really positive, really good.
How do you get on a game show? I got to know this.
There's like auditions and stuff you can be put forward to. Do you want me to put you forward for another game show?
Yeah. Are you kidding?
I think you do well. Shows.
Yeah,
you seem fairly smart. I think you do.
I'm
okay.
Full of useless information. I can throw out fun facts all day long.
Okay, yeah. We'll figure that one out.
So if it's that kind of game show, I'm in. But I can't.
Well, yeah, all kinds. Yeah. That's awesome. So today we've got a bit of a different show. We've been asking for questions so many times. So if you've got a question, email us at investoriespodcast@gmail.com. I don't know if we ever own the domain. Do we own a domain?
Do we? Yeah, we do. We do.
Oh, cool.
We own a domain. We just haven't
developed a website. Set that up.
Yeah, it's just there.
I like it. A lot of people produce like off the air, but the fact we do it in the air, I think it's great.
Yeah, this is good enough.
So, Kyle, I've got some questions for you. So the first one, and it's more looking at kind of how your route in, but kind of your why as well, which is, what is it about real estate that fulfills you?
Oh, okay. That's a loaded question. And, this is going to be so subjective because every person is going to have a different why, right? Well, most people are going to have a different why. I've kind of narrowed mine down to my time, and I think that's what most people would say. But it really is. It's a full on time freedom, because people can say things like, I want the ability to go on vacation when I want. Okay, well, that's time. I want the ability to spend some more time with my young children while they're growing up. Okay, well, that's time also. For me, I did this soul searching thing for a really long time to try to figure out what it was that I was even doing this for, because I worked a job for 14 years that did not fulfill me. And it made my life feel completely meaningless. And I'm talking down to the point where it was, you know, the typical person will go, you're told to go to school, get good grades so that you can get into a good college, and then you can get a good job and then start a family. And then what? You know, after that, it's like, what in the heck are you supposed to do for the rest of your life except wait to die, right? And that was super unfulfilling for me. So I was looking for something that would provide, you know, not just passive income, but something that satisfied me, something that I could do and feel proud of building. And, you know, we kind of dabbled in real estate, and I figured, you know what, let's just go all in and bet on ourselves and see if we can make this thing work. And all of a sudden the paychecks started coming in. You know, it was all of a sudden we were making money on these things. I was still working. And I was just like, you know what, let's really do this thing. And that's when, you know, I've told my story on here before, so I won't rehash that, but that's when we went all in on the whole thing and burned the ships and burned the boats and sailed off into the sunset. And I've found myself looking for that fulfillment, you know, in lots of different things. And I guess what fulfills me is building. I just like building. I like producing. I like doing things or creating things that didn't exist before. Maybe the buildings existed before, but the portfolio that generates cash or income for my family did not. And I created that, and I'm super proud of that. And that fulfills me. And then also being able just to take a 2-week vacation and drive to Alabama is another big one too, you know? So it's like, ultimately what it comes down to for anybody in life, not just in real estate, but for anybody in general, is everything that we do when we wake up in the morning is meant, we're trying to chase happiness. That's just it. It's just happiness. Excuse me. And so what you need to do is you need to figure out what it is that makes you happy, and take the money equation out of this. Yes, money is important, but figure out what it is that makes you happy, and then do that. And figure out at that point, you know, what can I do to monetize this? Is there a way to monetize this? If there's not, then figure out other ways to make money. There's so many ways to make money. And I've said this on here before too. Every single time you swipe your debit card or your credit card or whatever, that's somebody else's side hustle. So you need to get on the other side of the cash register so that people are actually paying you. And you can do things like rent stuff out, sell things on eBay, affiliate marketing. It doesn't matter. You know, there's a million different things, whatever the hot topic is of the moment, you know. Try something big and become an entrepreneur. It's scary as hell, but my gosh, is it rewarding. It's pretty amazing.
I really like that. I've got a follow-up question actually, which is, so looking at that passive income coming in, and I have a little bit of passive income, not enough to kind of run away from my W-2 and F off to Alabama for 2 weeks, but one day. But what I guess my question is, when did that look real? When did that start to become real, that you saw real money flow in, that retiring or stepping away from your W-2 became a possibility?
So I had this idea, which most people do when their goal is to get out of their job, and that is to replace your income, right? So you want to make sure that you've been able to live on this before, a pretty comfortable lifestyle. So it just makes sense that you can replace your income. You'll be able to quit that other job. I hadn't considered the tax benefits of real estate. And fact of the matter is, $100,000 Kyle over here making W-2 money of $100,000 a year, compared to the $100,000 Kyle over here who's making it through real estate, is the real estate guy is actually making more money because I'm not paying near as much taxes. This tax code exists to benefit both business owners and real estate investors, and you can take full legal advantage of this. You got to have a good CPA, obviously, somebody who's a tax strategist, somebody who knows what they're doing and knows where these different deductions are. You don't want to, you know. I for the first few years of my life, I was using an H&R Block person that was family, and they go through their checklist, and maybe they're not familiar with large real estate or even small real estate investors. And I'm missing so many different tax benefits of being a real estate investor. So I finally ramped up and decided to, you know, take a referral from a good real estate investor friend of mine. I called the guy up. He's like, based on the size of your portfolio at that time, I think we had around 50 units. He's like, expect to pay around $6,000 for tax prep and for all of your LLCs and everything that you have. And you talk about sticker shock. I'm like, holy crap, I can't do that. I was paying under $1,000, you know, previously whenever I was doing this. And he said, here's the reason why. And he laid out all the things that he's going to do. You know, I'm going to keep as much money in your pocket and out of Uncle Sam's hands on a legal aspect, from the legal aspect of it. You know, I'm going to make sure that we're maximizing your tax benefits as an investor so you make more money. And he's like, that money that you're going to pay to me, you're going to see that multiplied, you know, in the returns that you get. And so I did, and I signed up with him, and I did get those returns, and it's been wonderful. So that guy that was making 100,000 as a W-2 is actually smaller than the guy that was making $100,000 in rental income, because I had all that other back end stuff that was happening. So I reached that. Sorry, that was a really long answer to your question, but I reached that number and decided to just go ahead and jump at that point. And that's when we realized, oh, we could have done this 2 or 3 years ago. What were we doing? And but at the same time, it was good lessons learned.
No, I like that. I think, yeah, a long answer on it, but really useful. I think that's the bit I'm still figuring out. I actually, funnily enough, built a spreadsheet this morning to run my taxes and, various bits and pieces that I've got coming in and inflow, and then deductions off of the short-term rental we own, and just seeing that come to fruition, just seeing those, oh, I could actually depreciate if I want to. I can take all these. It depends on how long we're going to keep it. So that's a later in the year decision.
Yeah, there is a recapture thing, but you can always use 1031 exchanges and continue to roll that. Now, eventually you got to pay the piper, at some point when you're ready to retire. But I mean, you and I are still pretty young people. So we have a lot of time in order to let that money that we would normally pay in taxes continue to roll into more real estate. So if you continue to just 1031 this stuff into other properties and allow your portfolio to build, yes, you will. But I mean, if you take your $1 million property and it becomes a $10 million portfolio by the time you're ready to retire, yeah, you're going to have recapture taxes on that, but it's kind of a nice problem to have because you would have built a significant amount of equity by that point.
And the other shift I think I'm really interested in, and you kind of talked about it really in your answer previous, which is the shift of going from something that you maybe not loathe, but you are not the most enthused about getting up in the morning to do, versus investing and speaking to people and recording podcasts and things like that. There's real value in that. So I think that's a really interesting kind of component of this, that retirement doesn't mean sitting on your ass and doing nothing, right? It means
and you can't
doing what you want to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's not for people who are true entrepreneurs and people who like to produce. Retirement's not even an option. Retirement is a time, I'm technically retired, but at the same time, I fill all of my time doing the things that I want to do, which is a lot of different business stuff. We've got like 6 different businesses of varying levels of, size, I guess. And that includes real estate businesses. But my retirement looks like this. I don't do any work until about 11 a.m. That doesn't mean that I'm sleeping in until 11 a.m. I roll out of bed and I go to the gym. I go to the gym at 7. And then I get home, I make a nice hearty breakfast for my wife and I, and the kids. If I can get them to eat anything besides cereal, then they'll eat some of that too. Being summertime, they're home during that time. So we get to kind of have some hangout time and chat and everything. And then by 11 o'clock I don't schedule any appointments unless I can help it. Unless I can't help it, before 11 a.m. That way I can roll into the office by 11 and I can work all the way until 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. So this all goes back to, how do you want your life to look? How do you want to set things up? And when I first quit my job, I was setting up every appointment I could and just plugging it into any open space. And I realized 2 or 3 months after I became unemployed, that I was busier than I was before, and I still wasn't all that happy. It was because I wasn't setting my life up. It's like, well, what the hell am I doing this for? I could have gone to a job I didn't like, or I could do a schedule that I don't like. And so I rehashed the way that my schedule looks to where I'm taking care of the things that are most important to me first, instead of doing it at the end of the day, which most people do with a W-2.
And what does that look like? Do you block time? Do you group activities? What do you do for that?
Not so much. I suck at that, man. I wish I could be better. And I think you and I have talked about this before, but I usually set, any Zoom meetings or anything like that, I'll set that for the afternoon. But during the day, so from 11 o'clock until, I'll eat a small lunch or something, I bring it with me to the office. But from 11 o'clock on, I'm mostly just doing underwriting on my properties. Not really underwriting, but I guess going through all the financials, owner statements, seeing if there's expenses that are higher than they should be, trying to, put out little fires and doing follow-up from the day before. I never do stay at the office past 5 o'clock. I usually try to get out of here by about 3 o'clock or something like that. But if I've got something pressing, then I'll stay here, longer, obviously. But I don't really time block, and I think I'd probably be more productive that way, but I'm actually pretty happy with the way things are going right now. So I'm probably just going to stick with it. Because like I said before, figure out what makes you happy and just do that.
I like that. Do it and monetize it. I think that's good advice. Yeah. So pivoting a little bit, in terms of what's going on in the market, can you give us kind of a overview of your philosophy of what's happening, any slowdowns or changes, and how you're kind of pivoting to that?
Yeah. So I try to keep a pretty, close eye and kind of keep my fingers on the pulse of this kind of stuff. And there are people probably even listening to this podcast that are a little better educated on it than I am, but I mostly just look at the different, statistics that come out. I know Zillow just released price drops for the last 30 days. A lot of the metros are seeing some pretty significant ones. You and I being on the West Coast over here, I can speak to Portland, just in the last month, 46% of the homes that are listed, single family homes, have all had price drops in the last 30 days. So that softening that everybody was expecting, it is happening. I mean, you can't deny it. Mm-hmm. Yes, there are markets out there that are not seeing it as severe as what some of these other places are. But it just seems like different areas of the country react differently or at different times than when, others do. So some of these big metros are going to see a little bit more drastic right up front. And then some of the tertiary markets are going to see things happen a little bit slower or a little bit farther down the line. A lot of the markets I invest in are these tertiary markets. I'm not really seeing much of a difference. In fact, since my game is multifamily, I'm still seeing prices go up. We're actually dispositioning a 23 unit right now over in Arkansas. And I listed it for sale a week and a half ago, and I was under contract by the end of the day. And wow. I'm selling that thing at a pretty decent cap rate. So there still are buyers out there. They talk about multifamily being one of the best hedges against inflation. And I think a lot of investors are seeing that and really starting to believe it, especially since we're headed to 10%, interest rates. But I don't know if that's just kind of I think it's probably going to hit that before it starts coming back down again. I think we're going to see, interest rates pretty high. Interest rates typically, have to exceed the rate of inflation before you ever see any change in inflation. So that's just, historical numbers that I don't have any sources for. So please don't fact check me on that. But I did read it somewhere, I promise. But anyways, no, it's more along the lines of, I think it's going to continue to get a little bit worse before it gets better. I don't think we're going to see anything like 2008. It's just a slowdown. It's a healthy slowdown, and I'm excited for it. Having been a little bit more liquid right now, it's a good time just to kind of sit back and see what happens, because down markets are when, multimillionaires are made. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting. And I can only really speak to a few markets I've been looking at, but specifically San Diego. There seems to be a cooling, maybe of interest rather than prices. There's definitely prices shifting downwards or down a gear, perhaps, but they were massively inflated anyway. So it's kind of interesting, like you said, a bit of a correction, but also maybe just a bit of realism. So there's that idea that during the peak of a bull market, people kind of spend frivolously on stuff they don't need, on watches and NFTs and whatever else. And I think we did see that. So this tapering off is, like you said, quite healthy, and it's that place where you see whether you overpaid or not is kind of the interesting bit. And
there's go ahead. So there's another side of that too, which is the real shitty side, which is for, the people who are, really feeling this, the ones that aren't investors, the ones that aren't business owners, the ones that are just, paying the inflated prices at the supermarket. And that part really, really sucks, and so I don't mean to sit here and make this sound like, this is like a second Christmas or anything like that. 'Cause there's another side to it that the vast majority of Americans and the rest of the world are paying some pretty big prices for. So I would like to see this correction get over soon. But traditionally, if this became just a traditional recession, like ones that we've seen in the past, then we're looking at, a year or two, but I'm afraid that this could end up being the new normal. A lot of people are, I tell you what, it's not slowing people down from buying gas. It's not slowing people down from buying milk. People are still have to get the necessities. And so it worries me that this inflation, although I don't think it can sustain what it's at, it is going to be higher than the 2 or 3% that we've typically seen over the last, 15 years or so, or 15, 20 years, whatever the last time interest rates shot up super high. But it's just one of those things we have to kind of flow with and see what happens, and hope that the leaders of the country, make good decisions. And if they don't, then we vote them out. It's just that simple.
Okay, I like that. And then a question here, which is, if you had 20 grand and you were starting from scratch, what would you do?
Are we talking real estate investing, or are we talking just in general?
Let's stick with real estate.
Okay. I would keep it. I would keep it, and I would invest in my education first. I'm not one for timing the market. Everybody talks about trying to find the bottom and then investing then would be the best time. Sure. But if anybody could do that, they'd be outrageously rich. I would keep it for a little while and just kind of see how things play out. And I would invest in my education really heavy right now if they're new. This is the time. Honestly, I feel like this is the time when seller financing is really going to shine for purchasing real estate. And I mean, we've talked about it so many times. Almost every episode we talk about, seller financing, and rightfully so, because you get to make all the rules. So, I mean, if you can negotiate a 4% interest rate in a 6.5% interest rate environment, why wouldn't you? Right. So try to spend the least amount of money, stay as liquid as you can for a little while, at least until, the winds start to pass a little bit. And I don't know, man. There's business opportunities out there that are really worth, exploring. I don't think this is the time for people to be scared. When you talk about assets, people who stop buying whenever the market goes down, it just baffles me. It absolutely baffles me, because why would you want to pay top dollar in a good market for an asset and not pay low dollar in a lower market for the same asset? That makes no sense. So if it's worth buying whenever the prices are high, isn't it definitely worth buying when the prices are low? So I would be, excuse me, I would be getting super aggressive. I am getting super aggressive on going after properties that might be people would be interested in doing seller financing. Write some offers, throw out some 4%, 3% interest rates, even if you want to be super aggressive, and maybe even ask for no down payment. Hey, carry 100% of this thing. You'll get a higher monthly income if you do that. Just as long as the thing cash flows, it makes sense. So low markets, buy properties.
Yeah, and I think you hit on something that I've kind of got in the back of my mind as I'm looking at seller financing opportunities for a couple of strategies, and that is have the numbers reinforce the offer, right? When people are analyzing a seller financing deal, what can they do to make the reinforce the numbers, I guess, or kind of make an offer that works for them and that's not going to be laughed out the room, maybe, is a better way of putting it.
Well, it's funny, I guess to bring back some of the words that my old coach, Jeff Stevens, with the Thoughtful Real Estate Entrepreneur, used to say, you don't want to make an offer that makes the property work. You want to make an offer that makes the seller's goals become accomplished and also your own goals. And so I know that's kind of semantics, but at the same time, that means a lot, because when you make a proposal for a seller financing deal, typically what the sellers look at as that shiny object, which is the sales price, but does the sales price really matter all that much when it comes to the terms? Because let's say you plan on keeping this thing for 10 years, it's a really good asset. You're in a market that's typically appreciating and people want to move there. It's not tiny. There's plenty of population there to support vacancies. You want to look at things kind of off in the future a little bit. So in my personal opinion, overpaying a little bit for a seller financing deal is okay if you get the right terms. So if they want, if they're not really, they're kind of hemming and hawing over seller financing, I'm going to say, look, I'm not just going to give you your asking price. I'll pay over, and you don't even have a competing offer. I'm going to give you more money than you're asking, but I need you to carry this for 10 years. And not only that, I'd like to get a 4% interest rate. And I'm only interested in putting down 5%, but that's a good thing for you because you have to pay capital gains taxes on my down payment. So if I only give you 5%, that's less capital gains taxes that you have to pay. And not only that, but I'm going to have a higher monthly payment to you because the balance of the loan, the balance of the note is higher. So you're going to make more money every single month for 10 whole years. So we can accomplish both of our goals here. You get your sales price, I get my cash flow, and you have sustainable income for 10 straight years. And maybe we can even renew it by the end of that, so lots of different ways that you can make this thing work. You can't get that kind of stuff with banks. It just doesn't exist.
Yeah, and it's funny. I was talking to a realtor today about seller financing and a possible opportunity that she's presenting at the moment. And we talked about the idea of paying the seller rather than the bank. So when you finance your house through the bank makes money. Well, what have they done for us, really? Oh, so nothing. It's kind of interesting to take it off the kind of traditional path. Yeah, no, it absolutely is. And banks make money in so many different ways. They make a lot of money off the interest, credit card interest too. You put all your money in a bank account to where they pay you 0.001% interest on your balance. And then they're going to take your money and give people a credit line at, 18 to 24%. They're just killing it on the interest rate game. Why not, even as a seller, and, we had Alex Brashears on here, one of the guests. So for the listeners, go back and listen to Alex Brashears' episode. She talks about private lending and how to be financially free through private lending. So if you have a big old chunk of cash,
And this is kind of different than what your question was, John. But if you have a big old chunk of cash, there's a lot of ways that you can become financially free and get truly passive income by loaning out your own money. And so go back and check out her episode. So, but eliminating banks altogether is my ultimate goal. I don't care for them to be, assessing my debt to income and looking at all that stuff and underwriting in their way where I have no say in it. I can't really explain anything, my vision on a property to a bank. Some commercial banks will be a little bit more free with that sort of thing, but any other bank, especially with residential financing, it's so black and white that you just, the deals aren't there.
That's been my biggest tip. I was hanging out with some friends this weekend. They were asking me about like buying a home, then how did you buy a second home? How did that work? And my first tip was go and speak to someone other than your checking account holder. Go and speak to a broker that can actually help you, that can represent you, that can figure out a better way of doing things, a better way of looking at numbers. And then on top of that, keeping debt to income ratio low and having the kind of war chest to be able to go through with purchases. But other than that, it's pretty straightforward if you get a good loan person that can help you out.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's really interesting.
And there's other kinds of banks too. I have not delved into the world of hard money because I don't really typically do fix and flips or even the BRRRR method on single family homes or small multifamily. But it's like buying properties with cash. So I mean, essentially they can close deals just as fast as it takes to get through title work, which 5 days. As long as you open up escrow and get the title report ordered. All kinds of different ways that you can do things, and those guys are great. If you can get some of these guys, hard money lenders on your side. Yeah, it's huge. It's a major game changer. You just got to figure out what your exit plan is, so you're not paying 10% plus on interest. But in private money too, I think of private money as anybody. Grandma could be a private money lender. So if there's and a lot of these people have significant chunks of cash that they've got saved away that they're not investors, they're not business owners, and they had nothing to spend their money on. So they have these bank accounts that have ballooned up to these massive amounts, making no interest whatsoever. They want to loan to you as long as you've got a proven record, or you can prove your record, that you're a good person to lend to, and you give them a good return on their money. There's all kinds of things you can do without banks.
Kyle, you may not be able to answer this, but how does someone prove their record? Like, how does someone get started without starting, if that makes sense?
Yeah. Well, honestly, seller financing is really the best way. That's what got me into the commercial world. My first seller financing deal that I talked about on a previous episode was a storage unit complex. I couldn't get lending for it because they wouldn't lend to me. I didn't have any industry experience, no commercial loans to my name whatsoever. I was in my mid-20s, and they just weren't willing to take that risk on me. So I did the seller financing route, and that catapulted me into that commercial world. After that, I owned the thing for 3 years. I could get lending because I had good credit. I could get lending from any commercial bank that I went to. And they were great, and for everybody else, probably the most common way that people become landlords when that wasn't a goal of theirs is they end up renting out their very first house that they buy. And now all of a sudden, bam, you're a landlord. Now you've got, a balance sheet or a personal financial statement that shows ownership. And anytime you go get a loan, you're going to need to supply a personal financial statement anyways to that bank. And so now you've shown that you can run a business, because like I said, real estate is a business. And then also really the easiest way, especially with private money lenders, is supply them a personal financial statement and a copy of your credit report and a background check if you don't know them all that well. And just say, here, I'm willing to give you all, this is my entire portfolio right here of who I am. This is who Kyle Robertson is. Tell me, if you didn't know me and you weren't looking at my face and you saw this on paper with an 800 credit score and all of this income and cash reserves, would you lend to this person out of your retirement account or whatever? Would you do that? And most of the time they're going to say yes, as long as you have made good financial decisions from the beginning. If you have not, that really needs to be your number one thing. You need to make yourself look really good on paper before you start trying to go down this route. And there's tons and tons of resources out there to fix credit. And then other ways that you can increase your income too.
Like it. Kyle, that's awesome. Thank you so much for the round robin of questions. Super useful.
Yeah, man, absolutely.
And we'll be back next week.
Thank you for listening to the Investories podcast. We all have a story. What's yours? The Investories podcast.